When we say gold lane, the first thing that comes to mind is that it's the lane for marksman heroes and maybe a few mages. Why? Well, they're known for dealing high damage and scaling well into the late game, making them popular choices for maximizing farm. But you know what? If your rank is Mythical Glory or below, some fighter heroes are actually a better choice than marksmen. Take Freya, Ruby, and Masha, for example. These heroes don't rely on teammates as much, and they can handle themselves solo. Unlike marksmen who need their teammates to protect and set up plays for them, fighters can hold their own. Plus, you're not the priority target in team fights, so you don't need to worry about perfect positioning. It's very effective for my playstyle because I have an 82% win rate in the gold lane this season, and I've never used marksman heroes.
Nice.
A lot of marksman players don't even know how to play safe, and they love to go solo. Sometimes, or should I say most of the time, they're even the first to dive in, and they don't know how to position themselves in team fights. When that happens, the fighter heroes I've mentioned can burst or hold them down easily. Personally, I can't stand heroes that depend heavily on teammates. Of course, using a fighter has its disadvantages too, but I swear at lower ranks there are way more advantages. So in this video, I'll show you that the gold lane isn't just for marksmen. I played several games with a fighter hero, focusing on Masha to show you a different approach. And if you're interested in other heroes, drop a comment for a part 2. Before we dive into the gameplay, did you know that 99% of you watching right now aren't subscribed?
Wow.
Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone hit that button. Join me by subscribing so you won't miss any future uploads. Right from my first game, my teammates were already trolling. Joy's battle spell was Inspire, and Bane had the Seasoned Hunter in his emblem build, even though he wasn't the jungler.
What? What the f?
My lane opponent in this game was Leslie, so we're both weak in the early game and so strong in the late game. It's all about who can maximize each other's advantages. At this point, Leslie's teammate came to help her out. Alice threw her first skill into the bush, so I thought Alice would be there, but it turned out to be Alpha instead. Good thing I have 3 HP bar, so I managed to escape. But I had to dodge so many skills here since 4 enemies are already here. After causing chaos, Leslie got isolated, so we were able to take her down. And here's Leslie again, alone. I told you, most marksman players don't know how to play safe, especially in the lower ranks. But I only recommend fighter heroes that focus on damage build, not those sustained fighters. So you won't lack damage because sustained heroes should really only be in the XP lane. And usually these fighters scale, so they need items to be effective on the battlefield. These are the fighters that can solo and split push in the late game. Enemies will be afraid of you, even if you're alone. It's not the other way around, like when you're using a marksman. You won't be too worried because even if they gang up on you, you can still take at least 1 enemy down with you. I use Masha because not many people play her, and she doesn't get banned. She's like a poison in ranked games since players don't know how to counter her because she's rarely used. But if there's one hero that can really dominate, it's Freya. She's an auto-ban in high ranks, so if you're still in low rank, I highly recommend you to use her. She might just carry you. She's incredibly strong, especially when played in the gold lane. Then in team fights, focus on eliminating the enemy marksman first. This way, it's like neither team has a marksman at all. At this point, we were about to end the game, but it seemed like we all made mistakes. As a result, we got outplayed, and the match dragged on. The enemies became really strong in the late game, so we ended up at a disadvantage. And of course, they'll start blaming each other, even though everyone made mistakes. It's already 21 minutes in and the Lord is up, but Joy got killed. That's what you get when you use Inspire for Joy. Then Natalia follows Joy, and of course Bane won't be left behind. They got killed one after another. At this point, it's just me and Ling left. Joy will respawn soon, but she'll just die again right away. I don't get why Alice didn't use her ultimate here. So, she ended up dead. She even had a semi-tank build, but enemies really melt against Masha. Good thing Ling managed to steal the Lord, which won us the game. Look at Gatot Kaka here. He actually had Wind of Nature. It's just so weird. But because of that, he managed to break my immortality. Weird, but it was somewhat effective. Next game, I'm up against Wan. Here, I'm really at a disadvantage in terms of range. This is the biggest drawback of using a fighter in the gold lane. So if the enemy doesn't fully maximize that advantage, they're the ones who'll end up struggling come mid to late game. Another thing is, since fighters are generally tankier than marksmen, assassins will have a harder time bursting you down. And when everyone's fully equipped, assassins will even hesitate to go 1v1 with you, which is the opposite if you're a marksman. In lower ranks, players love to go solo, so you actually have a better chance of winning with a fighter in the gold lane. Just make it through the laning phase and be cautious, because enemies will prioritize ganking that lane. Only a fighter can pull this off, diving into 5 enemies and still managing to take down 2. This is just Masha. Imagine if it were Freya, and the enemies didn't know what they were doing. Marksman players try the same thing, diving into 5, but they just get burst down immediately. So you might as well use a fighter. Here, the enemy's mage and marksman were doing something sneaky. They were taking the Lord, and I don't think my teammates even noticed. Since neither side had a retribution holder, I tried to kill the enemies first, but the Lord got taken before we killed both of them. And luckily, we were the one who got the Lord.
Nice.
Lilia didn't even have a chance to use her ultimate here. Now for the third game, I'm up against Beatrix. I was a bit nervous here because Hayabusa said their marksman is ranked number 3 in the world. It looks like I'm going to have a tough fight. Early in the game, Hayabusa dove into the tower, but he made a mistake with his entry, so he ended up getting killed, and Edith got killed too. Here, I prioritized taking down Edith first, since she was low on health and she wouldn't be able to use her ultimate. I thought I wouldn't get hit by Edith's first skill, but it has such a wide range that I ended up getting killed. Good thing our Ling is skilled, so even against a global Beatrix, we can handle it. Hayabusa had just finished taking the turtle and went straight to our purple buff, thinking he was invisible. This is one of the advantages. Because players aren't used to facing a fighter in the gold lane, they don't know your damage well. There's a high chance they'll miscalculate your damage, and you can take that opportunity to take them down.
Yeah, boy.
Next game, my lane opponent is Ruby. This time it's a fighter. Ruby is strong in team fights, while Masha excels in isolated fights. It's simple. Fight her where you're strong. It's really important to know the strengths and weaknesses of the hero you're using. That's what they call mastery. And if you really want to dominate the game, you need to know the skills, strengths, and weaknesses of every hero, not just the one you're playing. That way, when you face them, you'll know the window to fight back, and you'll have a higher chance of predicting your opponent's moves. As YSS says,
if you can predict the enemy's moves, you won't be defeated.
After I killed Ruby, the enemies ganged up on me, but I'm still alive. Next game, I'm up against Layla. This hero really needs a good tank to be effective, but if she's alone, she's super easy to kill. She's practically useless when she's by herself or not hiding under a turret. For my final game, I'm up against Ixia, another hero that's dependent on teammates and useless when alone because she lacks mobility. In high rank with a 5-man team, she could work. But in low ranks like this, you'll struggle to carry your teammates because you're just as dependent on them. Just to be clear, I'm not saying it's always better to use a fighter. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. But players in low ranks, mythical glory and below, don't fully maximize the advantages of marksmen. They lack mechanics and love to play solo, so their role as a marksman becomes pointless. At this point, only 2 enemies were left, so I decided to dive them under the turret. I thought the game would end here, but something weird happened. My hero switched targets even though I was locking onto the tower. Look, I kept tapping repeatedly. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget hit like and subscribe button. Thank you and God bless.